Which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay. What's the second best? There is no second best. There's no second best crypto asset. There's a crypto asset. It's called Bitcoin, right?
Welcome to the Why Bitcoin Show. It's a weekly podcast on why Bitcoin matters and how it's helping individuals from all walks of life achieve true financial and individual sovereignty. Bitcoin embodies real financial empowerment, and compared to all other investment choices, there really is no second best. Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning into today's episode. Today I want to talk about something I am calling the Bitcoin inheritance blind spot. Now, if you hold Bitcoin in self-custody, you know that Bitcoin is a digital bearer asset. And that's a feature. It's not a bug. That's the whole point. You're supposed to be able to hold your own money, much like cash. But it creates a problem that very few of us, I think, want to spend time thinking about. If you die, your Bitcoin can die with you. That's just the harsh reality. And so this episode is not about paranoia or fear mongering. It's just about responsibility. If you're in the business of Bitcoin self-custody, firstly, good job. You've taken the right steps. You've decided that you want to take on the responsibility of being your own bank. And that's awesome. And I applaud you for that. It's something that I preach day in, day out. But what it also means is that you're responsible for making sure that your family can actually access what you've built if something happens to you. You've put in a ton of time to be able to understand Bitcoin. You've got that asymmetry of information advantage where the world doesn't know what you know about Bitcoin. And so you've been DCAing your ass off for however long. You've built up a sizable stack. You know Bitcoin is the scarcest asset on earth. It's the fastest horse in the race. Sure, we don't feel like we're winning at this very moment, but as Trump said at one point, we're going to get tired of winning because I think that's where this is going. So you've done the hard work, but the next part is to make sure that your family can actually access what you've built. And so I want to talk through today this inheritance blind spot and why I think people with even the best security setups could still fail, and some things I think that you might want to think about doing about that. So let's just start with a real problem. I think, and this is not just limited to Bitcoiners, by the way, from my experience, very few people want to deal with this uncomfortable truth is that most people don't have an inheritance plan. And I don't know many Bitcoiners that actually have an inheritance plan. Last time I did a quick survey of a group, maybe half had. And that's kind of alarming, particularly if a material portion of your wealth is in Bitcoin self-custody, you definitely want a plan. And I get it. People are focused on security, they're focused on privacy, and you want to avoid the plethora of things that can go wrong in terms of actually losing your Bitcoin. And so people have put in place incredibly elaborate and detailed plans for protecting their Bitcoin. But I'm not too sure they've taken that next step to ensure that the people who are left behind, grieving your departure, presumably, they'll be able to actually access the Bitcoin. So you can have the best setup in the world, but if you die tomorrow, there's a chance your family might never see a single Satoshi. And that would be a damn shame because, as I said, we might not feel like we're winning right now, but uh, imagine Bitcoin's 100x from here and your family's not able to get access to that generational wealth, which you and I can see in the future. It's all just a question of when, it's not a question of if. And so I think part of the challenge you have here is the fact that traditional estate planning isn't designed for bearer assets. It's not something that your lawyer necessarily understands. Your lawyer doesn't understand seed phrases. They don't know what a hardware wallet is. Certainly don't know what cold storage is or multi-sig or wallet coordinator files or XPubs or UTXOs, nothing like that. Your spouse might know you have Bitcoin, but they don't know where it is or how to access or what to do with it. Those are all problems. And here's the kicker. Even if they find it, they might not be able to execute because you basically might have optimized for secrecy, not necessarily survivability. So that's actually the inheritance blind spot, the sort of gaping hole between, securing your Bitcoin and then making sure that your Bitcoin actually survives you. I mean, maybe you want to be like Sailor. Maybe you want to donate your Bitcoin to the network, and that's fine. It makes all of ours more valuable. I don't think that's smart. I think that your future children are going to be a little bit bitter about that if they ever found out. But I think it'd be more sensible to put in place a plan so that they can actually access the fruits of your labor. Because remember, Bitcoin is our stored energy, and we're taking our surplus and we're chucking into this essentially battery to store energy for long periods of time. And most of us think Bitcoin is money for 1,000 years. And so who knows what it's going to look like in 50 or 100 years? And don't you want to ensure that at least your offspring and their offspring have a chance to see what that looks like? I certainly do. I'm not saying 10 Satoshi is going to be life changing. What I'm saying is you want to make sure they have a plan, right? So I want to talk through some failure modes. These are things that I've seen firsthand. They're also things that I have experienced in the sense that in the work I do with Bitcoin Mentor, some of my colleagues will have conversations with clients. We meet regularly. We don't necessarily discuss the details of each client, but we'll discuss scenarios broadly speaking. And so these aren't hypothetical. They are real life scenarios, and they can potentially lead to heartbreaking outcomes, which is basically like lost Bitcoin. So first failure mode is hidden ownership, right? Nobody knows you have Bitcoin. You've been private, you're a NIM online, you don't even attend Bitcoin meetups. And maybe that's a good thing, right? I'm not gonna downplay that. But if you die and nobody knows it, your Bitcoin exists, then it's obviously gone, right? It's gone forever. No one can inherit what they don't know exists. So you probably should disclose it to someone, at least someone you care about. The next thing is discoverability. So that's failure mode two. People might know you have Bitcoin, but they don't know where to find it. I actually had this with a client recently. There was supposedly two Bitcoin, but it was like in a mountain of papers. They had nowhere to find it. Where's the hardware wallet? I mean, that's even assuming they knew what a hardware wallet is, right? Which drawer, which safe, which vault, which trusted third party? You might know, but they don't necessarily know. And so if you don't have clear instructions, it's like giving someone like a treasure hunt with no map. Good luck. Failure mode number three is the comprehension side. So let's assume they've got access to a hardware wallet. Now what? Do they know the PIN? Is there a passphrase? Do they know the difference between a seed phrase and a passphrase? If you never explained it, if you've never documented this stuff, it can be very problematic. Some hardware devices will break after a certain amount of attempts. So you need to be able to not only know that it exists, find that it exists, you need to be able to understand what it is so that you can access it, right? Failure mode number four is the key material storage mistakes. And there's no right way when it comes to this. I just want to stress this point. I've heard of people putting their seed phrase in their actual will. Okay, that is just absolutely unacceptable. Never, ever, ever do that. Wills become public documents after probates in different countries around the world, Australia included. They might put it in a safety deposit box. They might put it in a place where the executor can't access it. That's probably a better bet. You could split it across locations, but fundamentally, you need to store it in a place where people know where to access it. And on top of that, you don't want them to access it before you actually die, because that could be a weakness too. So that's something just to think about. Where do you actually store your seed phrase? And then number five, and I think this is something I've seen firsthand outside of Bitcoin, just with deaths within the family over the years. If your lawyers doesn't understand Bitcoin, imagine this situation, right? You've had a tragic event happen. You suddenly are no longer with us. And whatever ill will and challenges within the family dynamics, and look, everyone's got challenges within their family dynamics. Sometimes these things come out. after death. It's just one of these things. Your spouse will be overwhelmed, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, parents, everyone is sort of at each other's throats in one way or another, potentially. People are highly stressed, they're highly emotional, no one can agree on what to do. And so sometimes like nothing happens and it just sits there and inaction. And this is a problem. I've seen this happen where estates are just kind of like grinding forward, like year by year, and it can take like a decade or 12 years. Of one estate I saw it took 12 years to finalize just because of all the internal fighting and disputes. And and so from a Bitcoin perspective, if I look at that and I go, look, as long as people know you've got Bitcoin, they know how where to find it, how to actually access it. You've put the instructions there. You've secured the seed phrases properly, and you've got a executor or trusted advisor or third party who can actually help your family during a time of crisis. Because remember, it's a time of crisis. It's not a fun time. I think you've got a better chance of ensuring that your Bitcoin will be passed on to the next generation. I think all of these failure modes, as I've described them, are preventable. And I think that's the good news. So here's the mindset shift I would encourage you. I'm not never prescriptive. I'm not somebody who prescribes anything, but I'd encourage you to make. You need to design your Bitcoin inheritance plan for non-Bitcoiners who are under an immense amount of stress. Imagine your spouse, sibling, or executor 48 hours after your death. They're grieving, they're overwhelmed, they're not thinking clearly. Hell, I don't think clearly if I'm hungry or I haven't got my 7 to 8 hours, quite literally. I'm just not the same person. When you are emotionally overwhelmed, your faculties in terms of making decisions are severely compromised. And so do you want to make sure that you've put in place something that is sound, clear, concise, and accessible to people who don't necessarily understand Bitcoin, who don't want to get into the nuances of BIP 110 and what ordinals and whatever else if you find yourself dealing with online? You want to ensure that these people can inherit the assets easy peasy or as easy as possible. As you may know, I've partnered with the legends at Bitcoin Mentor, headed by BTC Sessions, to look after the Australian market. And we're laser focused on helping you get your coins off of exchange and into self custody. Wherever you are in your journey, whether you're just getting started or you're advanced and you're looking to up your game, we've got the skills, knowledge, and experience to get you on your way towards true ownership and sovereignty. Personally, I believe that if you require cooperation or permission from any third party to move your coins, then you're not really self-sovereign and you don't actually truly own your own Bitcoin. In fact, in that case, I think you may as well just own the ETF. Self-custody isn't as difficult as some people make it out to be, and I'm very passionate about helping people who care about sovereignty take control of their Bitcoin. If you're interested in finding out more about how we can help you, hit me up at dale@bitcoinmentor.io, or you can book a session with me. The link is in the show notes. Now, back to the show. If you don't have a plan, the reality is that they probably are not going to get access to your Bitcoin. You hope they do, but hope's not a strategy. So, as I said, what is your plan? You've got to make sure that it's discoverable. They know that it exists, no secrets. You don't want to tell the whole world, but for God's sake, you need to tell someone. Otherwise, you'll just donate your Bitcoin to the network. Location, they need to know where to actually find it. I mean, you're not leaving it on exchange, that's for sure. Not if you're practicing self-custody. So how have you secured your Bitcoin? Is it on a mobile wallet? Is it on a cold card, single sig? Is it multi-sig? Is it geographically distributed? They got to know. Instructions. You need to tell them what to do step by step. Go here, grab this, speak to this person. If they don't know that, they might have all the stuff, but they're not going to know how to actually compile the wallet if you've got a multi-sig, for example. They're not going to know how to spend the Bitcoin, which is the whole point. Obviously, if you've got a multi-sig, you've got to geographically distribute your keys, right? You've got to store your seed material separate from your instructions. You really just want to ensure that they don't compromise each other. That's just good hygiene. And then finally, just write everything in plain language, something super simple that a non-technical person should be able to understand. And honestly, I, for example, within my will, have made provision to appoint what I'm calling a digital asset advisor, an expert, the folks at Bitcoin Mentor, for example, and some trusted people here in Australia who are going to assist my family in the event that I am no longer with them. Because let's be honest, I've got a great wife, but she sure as hell is not going to be doing on-chain transactions, if you know what I mean. So you don't need to be like a blockchain PhD cryptographer cypherpunk to have a basic plan that is in plain language, that is human friendly, particularly to non-Bitcoiners. And let's remember, most of the time these are non-Bitcoiners. These are not Bitcoiners inheriting the Bitcoin. And you want to have a plan in place so that when the emotions are running high, you've been able to essentially give them peace of mind to go like, listen, here's the plan. I know that you're missing me, but as a consolation, I've got generational wealth for you. So, as a starter, here are three things that you may want to think about doing this weekend. And I reckon maybe it takes you like an hour, maybe a bit more. It really depends on how much Bitcoin you have, the number of setups you have, etc. And like, oh, obviously this all applies to KYC Bitcoin, right? If you've got non-KYC Bitcoin, you need to think of a different plan altogether. You might want to tell one or two people, and you're not going to document that in a will, right? That's completely outside the scope of what we're talking about here. We're talking about everything you've bought KYC, assume it's tracked forever. Don't try to be a smart ass and avoid your tax obligations because they will bite you in the ass because as we know, governments love to spend other people's money, and when they're running out of other people's money, they're going to come for you. So, what are the three things I think you should be thinking of doing this weekend? Or whenever, really. Number one, create what I'm thinking is a treasure map. This is just a simple document that will list all your Bitcoin, all the different types of Bitcoin, your different stacks. You don't put your seed phrases there. It's like an inventory. I have Bitcoin. It's in a hardware wallet. It's in a cold card. The wallet is in the top of my drawer at work. This is what you need to know to access it. It's simple stuff like that. You're not putting your 12 or 24 words there. Absolutely not. But you're just giving the person on the other side, a spouse, a loved one, an executor, this is what we've got. It's the inventory, right? Separately should obviously be your key material. Now, best practice, a lot of Bitcoiners will be like, it needs to be in steel, in a vault. But what if the vault gets compromised? Okay, then I need to bury it underground. Look, you need to figure out what makes sense for you, how you actually want to store your seed material. Obviously, it's not good enough just to leave your Bitcoin sitting on a cold card because cold cards can fail. So you need to back up your cold card. So then what are you going to do with the backup? Is it paper? Is it steel? Where do you want to put that? That's for you. I'm not going to give you what I think is right. Everyone is different. Everyone's circumstances are different. You know, high profile people need to worry more about this stuff. And that's why I think multi-sig fixes all that. But for the average person, single sig might be enough. But think of a safe deposit box in a independent vault. I would recommend you stay away from a bank vault just because personally not a huge fan of banks. Obviously, the downside being is you can't just access your Bitcoin whenever you want on the weekend. Like, oh, it's 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. I just want to go grab my one of my keys at my vault. Yeah, can't do that. Business hours. Sometimes you have to make appointments. These are all the trade-offs, man. You just got to figure out what makes sense. But yeah, so step one, create a treasure map. Step two, document your key material and store it separately away from your will. You also might want to think about whether you mention Bitcoin in your will at all, because as I said from the outset, some countries of the world, not all, and I'm not too sure where you are listening from, but wills can become public records. So if you make it known that you've got Bitcoin in your will, then you could be creating security targets, OPSEC challenges for your heirs in the future. Of course, the ATO or the tax office, wherever you might live in the world, knows about it already. But from a security perspective, it might not be prudent. If I was somebody who wanted to engage in a $5 wrench attack, I might just find a silly Bitcoiner who recently died and see if I could get access to that wall. Because usually it's public records, you can just pay. pay a little bit of cash and you'll get access to that. So think about that. That's a separate issue. But yeah, so, and the last step, as I say, is test it. You've got to test your setup, walk your spouse or your executor, whoever that might be, through the process. Just explain the steps. If they're confused, simplify. What you might want to do, as I say, is appoint a specialist. It could be Bitcoin mentor, it could be a friend, it could be anyone. It doesn't really matter. You've just got to make sure that the people who are going to be administering your estate and inheriting your assets, particularly if you've got a lot of Bitcoin or a lot of your material wealth is tied up in Bitcoin, you want to make sure that they can access a trusted expert. What you don't want to have them do is now trying to Google or use AI to figure out like who's a Bitcoin security expert. I mean, we really don't want that scenario. So just think about that. So those are three things that I think you can do. And just to reiterate, number one, just create a treasure map, which is like an inventory list. Number two, I would say document all your seed phrases and figure out how you want to distribute that. That's up to you. There's no right answer here. There's only trade-offs. And then number three, actually do a test. Literally do a test with your spouse to see if they could access your Bitcoin. Run it through with your executor who's appointed to manage your affairs post your death and administer your estate. Run it through with them and say, can you actually make this happen? And see, are there actually gaps there? And you'll know pretty quickly. And so spending time on that could save your family quite literally years of grief. I can speak from personal experience. I've had a grandfather and an uncle and who passed away. And I mean, South Africa is different because there's a lot of administration and bureaucratic processes. Okay, so that aside, neither of their affairs were particularly organized. And it took, I think my grandfather, it took 12 years and my uncle took 10 years. So anyway, you don't want that. It draws out the grieving process like nothing on earth. The one plus side is that fortunately my uncle had literally taken out a life insurance policy a couple of months before and doubled the insurance payout. So, every cloud has a silver lining, but my God, that was pretty unfortunate for the family and a very stressful time for everyone. So anyway, that's the point I want to make. If you want to do a quick self-audit, I've also just built a free Bitcoin inheritance stress test. It takes a couple minutes and it will very quickly show you where your weak points are. You can visit mybitcoinwill.com and all you need is an email to unlock it. It's all private and confidential. I don't store any information there. Just literally type in your email and you'll have access to the actual test itself, which is all digital, and do the test and see where you stand. I think that's all for today. If you've got any questions or feedback, as always, I'm all ears. I hope this has been a useful episode. And until next time, friends, keep stacking because, my God, do I wish I had fiat right now, like nobody's business. Be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. I'll leave it on that note. Cheers. All right, that's all we have for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you've got any suggestions or topics or ideas you'd like covered, or you just want to give me some feedback, hit me up at dale@whybitcoinshow.com or get in touch via Twitter at dale21m. If you want to support the show, why don't you just send me loads of Bitcoin? That'd be great. Or alternatively, just subscribe to the show, give it a 5-star rating, write nice things in the comment section, and share with friends or family. Whatever you think is best. Seriously, all support is most appreciated and welcome. And to anyone listening for the first time who's made it thus far, welcome. It takes a lot of time getting into Bitcoin, but trust me when I say Bitcoin is both difficult to see and impossible to unsee once discovered. Hope to see you again. Until next time, cheers.